Greetings, all my knights and punta ones out there. You are listening to Eternal Journey, the podcast that talks about all things eternal with a focus on limited play. I'm your host, Jedi, and this is episode 107 of the podcast, where we're going to be doing our 50 tips in 50 minutes with special guest Gunner116, member of Eternal Journey, the team, as well as the draft champion until dethroned. If I don't even think we're gonna do a draft championship. It's just you. You're just amazing. There you go. Forever eternalized. Gunner, how you doing, buddy?
I'm very good. I'm very good. Thank you again for having me. How everyone doing?
We are happy to have you. True expertise in the building.
Yep,
But joining
that's
me
a
on
really
the
good point, Jedi. That's so funny. Like forever the draft champion, right?
yeah, period. Done. There will
These are
never be
draft
another.
opens.
I'm not gonna lie, that feels pretty good. That does feel
And
pretty
right? I never thought of that. That's awesome.
Order the plaque. It's
good.
official. That luxurious voice that is joining us on the internet is John Holio. Say hello.
Yo.
And then sitting across to even out this square fecta, if you will, is Z1, Z only, Darth Herman 2. What's up, homie?
What's up, guys? Happy to be here. Good to be here.
Glad to have you, man. Always a pleasure. Of course, before we begin, I want to give a quick shout out to all the great people that tune in, not only to the show, but our Twitch channel, of course. Really appreciate you guys tuning in, watching all the time. A couple of ongoing members of the Jedi Order, the Jim Joe, Try and Kill Me, Extinction, Heavy Metal Hero, and MLNTN. Thank you guys so much for your ongoing support. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into our Pack 1 Pick 1, where Gunner is going to be taking point on this one. And hopefully this will help you guys out a little bit. This one's fresh off the presses. I did this one, I think, last stream, not tonight. Anywho, starting off, Shoal Dredger is a 7/6 Mandrake for 9 Shadow. Shoal Dredger costs 1 less for each unit in your void. Fate, discard the bottom card of your deck. I love this card personally. 4 tap Maximizer is a 1/1 Sentinel for 2 time, deadly, +2 maximum power while you have a relic. Another solid pick at the beginning if you need to. Encroaching Vine is a 4/4 Mandrake for 5 primal. Reckless, regen, summon, plunder. Nope, don't like it. Thank you very much. You can ship that on to the next guy. Skyguard Sentinel, 5/5 Sentinel for 6 time, flying on the enemy turn. Solid roadblock in the air, but something you can pick up later. Medibot Station is a 2 Shadow Relic. Summon, play a 1/1 Grenamender, which when it dies or entomb, you gain 3 life. Pay 4 and sacrifice a Medibot Station, play a 1/1 Grenadin. Rash Flame Spear will just go ahead and continue moving right along, not waste a breath on that one. Barricade Basher is a 5/5 Sentinel for 3 fire, and of course you've played any of this format, you know this absolute beater of a card that is the bane and the joy of all draft decks everywhere. Reckless, summon, discard a card. Darkwater Vines is a 1/1 Mandrake for 1 Shadow. Regen, the bane of my existence it feels like lately. Ultimate, when a player discards a card, Deepwater Vines gets +1 attack, and each player discards the bottom 4 cards of their decks. Going into the uncommons, we have Feln Painting is a gain primal and shadow influence and 1 life. Depleted while you already have 2 or more power maximum power. Plate Grafter is a 2/2 Sentinel for 2 Justice, Endurance, and then Ultimate pay 3, and you can swap a card from your hand for a card in your market of either Justice Influence or Factionless, and then give a unit in your hand or weapon, right? +1/+1 Endurance. Yeah, just a unit, my bad. And then finally, Silver Slicer is a +3/+2 relic weapon for 3 Shadow. Valkyrie Warp, you get quick draw. Meh. All right, so Gunner, before we go into our rare, what are you looking at in this pack and why?
So yeah, thank you for the rundown. I'm immediately grabbed by the Basher. Unfortunately, as sad as it is pretty much the defining card of the format. You either have to be able to answer it early, or you need to be playing it yourself. Is where I think I am still after the pack and draft changes a couple of weeks ago. I do like Shoal Dredger as well. I do like Plague Crafter, and Silver Slicer has definitely improved, being that extra power on the front side of that. And if you ever warp it, having caught you on a weapon, a relic weapon is very strong. So I have certainly come up on that card, but I think I am on Basher at the moment.
Okay, let's see if our rare, which is actually a legendary, can dissuade you from Basher. And this is Daheen Blitz. This is a 5/3 Valkyrie for 5 triple fire, flying, charge, then ultimate, pay 3, draw a fire weapon from your market. You just draw it. You don't have to swap a card. You just pay 3 and you get a relic, or a weapon from your market. All right, is that better than Basher in your eyes?
Unfortunately, I don't think it is. As sad as it may be to have the cool legendary charge unit, the triple fire is such a commitment for me that even though it's just pick one, pack one, I think you will probably win more games by having Basher in your deck than you will by having the Daheen Blitz, even though it is a good card. And if I'm in fire, pretty heavy fire, I probably would take it if we saw it later. But yeah, I fear I am still bashing people if I can.
Nice. All right. Alex, do you have anything to add here that Gunner might have not covered?
I'd find it very hard to pass on this legendary for me. I think I would take the legendary, assuming I'm gonna maybe get more bashers. I think hoping to be in that color, I guess. But I think I go with the legendary here. And obviously I'm probably wrong, but that's what I would do.
Not obviously. I think you've done
No.
quite a bit of solid drafting here lately and good decisions. So I don't blame you for being a little greedy. I mean, if anything, the three of us are known for throwing away our first picks. So I understand. John, what is your side of this story, my friend?
Yeah, it's really, really close for me between this Basher and this Blitz. I'd probably lean Blitz as well, but let's say if this was a draft open pack, it's 100% Basher for me. But if I'm just trying to win games in the queues, I think I'd go for the Blitz. It's like almost just as good. And if you're playing Fire, right, like you're gonna play Blitz, unless you're in like some 3-faction deck. Like Basher is not a card I'm really looking to splash, So I don't know. It's insanely close. And like I said, if like this weekend, this pack, I'm definitely taking Basher. But I'll take. I'm with Alex, I guess.
All right, and there you have it. That's why Gunner is the only and forever eternal,
Yep.
double meaning eternal draft champion. All right,
What are you taking here,
that's...
Jedi?
Oh, I was streaming it, so I had to take Blitz. Like I mean, there wasn't even a question about it. I was like, oh, time to entertain. And I ended up not running it, I believe. Because, yeah, I think it was a 3-color deck. So I was like, yeah, no. But yeah, I mean, when I'm streaming, I try to somewhat try to entertain. Okay, well, that's it, guys. So let's go ahead and dive into it. 50 tips. I'm gonna throw some stuff out there, and one of you guys are gonna be able to bullet it out an answer in under 10 seconds. Because no, actually, no. I guess we get minutes. You get 60 seconds, which should be plenty of time. Okay, so starting off, we'll go ahead and send it back over to you. Actually, we'll send it over to you, John, since Gunner already kind of gave us our snippet on this. But number 1. Barricade Basher and Side Street Monitor are premier 3 drops.
Yeah, they are. They go in the same deck even, and you can basically play as many of these 2 cards as you can scoop up in the packs. They're both Sentinels, so some other synergy cards also work great with both of these cards together. Yeah, and you really don't have to go past um, the 3-drop slot if you build your deck around cards like this. So these are very good 3-drops in the format. I think you can't go through a draft run without seeing at least one of these cards.
You're not wrong. Okay, number 2, Gunner. I'm going to send it to you because I feel like everyone on this podcast right now is on the same sheet of music. Let's see what your take on this is. Number 2, send to market is still good even at 6.
So yeah, I think you still, if you're running Justice, you're still going to run 1, maybe 2 if you're a slower deck and you pick them up. But the days of just playing 3 to 4 center markets, I think, are over. 6 is a lot different to 5 costs, even though it is only 1 power difference. The amount of games that you might not even reach 6 is exponentially higher, I think, than 5. Even though it might still be quite low. It's a factor to have in. But yeah, it's still unconditional, almost unconditional removal. And it's still a good answer. But yeah, the fact that it now costs 6 is quite the hit, and it can compete at the top end with those 6 drops that you want to be playing, air support, stuff like that. Metal Fang, it's sort of in your slower deck and stuff. So yeah, it's a bit more clunky, but it's still good.
All right, going into number 3, Alex, this one's for you, buddy. If you're going to fix your power, fix aggressively in packs 2 and 3. That's where the fixing at, and the stronger cards are in packs 1 and 4. What do you think?
Yeah, you really need to push it kind of in those packs now. It seems like the fixing is not as fixed. I mean, not as pushed as it was before. And I don't think this is like officially like announced or anything, but the percentages seem way lower as far as the tokens and the seats go. So if you're going to try to play 3 or 4 colors, you do really need to be aggressive with picking the fixing in packs 2 and 3, because it's just not really around in packs 1 and 4.
Fair enough. Sending it back over to John. This is one that I took from you. Grafters are all fantastic, with Vine Grafter being splashable, and of course the cream of the crop.
Yeah, I mean, they're all good. Like they're fine 2-drops, right? But Grafter is like above and beyond. It's not even close. You still need to have a plan, you know, with a market grab for them to actually be good. So I mean, if you end up with a weird late pack 4 Grafter, like I've had 1 or 2 of these lately where I get like gifted a very late Grafter, and I'm just like, man, there's just really nothing here. Like I didn't really get past anything. Of course I'm drafting with that in mind. It still doesn't get there, but even still, those Grafters are probably going to make the deck like a lot. I'm finding a lot of my decks are a little short on those good 1 and 2 drops sometimes, since the pack switches. So yeah, these are basically the best ones you can get.
Gunner, martial efficiency is the bee's knees, hands down. The point where you might even train wreck your draft to play it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I can agree with this one. I think it's, if not the best card, probably the top 3 or 5 in the whole format. Not just rares, not just legendaries or commons. Actually, top 3 or 5 card for me. Taking it over Dichro, first pick, pack 1, and I think that's correct. Just is such an effect, such a flexible card on its own. Never mind the synergies you have with Amplify, attachments, just being able to nerf your whole opponent's side of the board in the late game, getting multiple cards for your 1, all for the cost of. And you can just play it as a trick if you need to early in the game. You can just play it for 2 mana, and that I think is what's so powerful with it, the flexibility that you have. So yeah, it's in a format with extremely high power level at uncommon. You've got Metal Fang, you've got Water Tread, Vine Grafter, this is probably the best bunch.
Fair enough. Alex, Scythe is better than you think.
Yeah, I mean, kills your opponent out of nowhere. Works really good with berserk units. Works really good with the premier common barricade basher that we talked about earlier. Helps push damage through with that guy. Yeah, overwhelm is really good, a very effective way to kill your opponent. And yeah, don't forget about this card when they have 2 power up, and block accordingly.
John, Auto Tread can warp an entire game around it.
Yeah, it can and it does. Sometimes your opponent will just be feeling themselves and run out there early, turn 1 auto tread or whatever, and it turns out you just don't have a way to deal with it, and you just lose the game on the spot, basically. A typical hand can, on your side of the board could be 3-1 Bastion Gatekeeper, 2-1 Side Street Monitor, which are normally very good, justice cards, but when they're facing down an auto tread, those cards just basically do nothing. They're just food for that thing. You just have to weather the storm until you draw some way to interact with it and remove it, and just hope that it works out. Because yeah, it just turns out that you just don't get to play that game on turn 1 in some cases.
Yep, so very true. Gunner, Blackout the Skies is better than it seems thanks to it being fast speed and the Amplify being able to be a 2-for-1.
Yeah, so I've come up quite a lot. When the format first broke, the very first iteration, I thought this was like a market card at best. But as the progression occurred, flyers became more and more important. I thought that Styles beckoning, the 3-drop justice card that creates 2 Valks, would kind of make this sort of irrelevant, but it didn't turn out that way. And yeah, I'm happy to main deck probably 1 at this point. It's worth noting that you don't actually need a unit on board for if your opponent has 1 shadow up and passes on turn 1 and there's a pause on your side, then that means they have Blackout the Skies, because I think that's the only card that will give you a pause at that point in the game, which is good to know. And also you can amplify it as well, even if your opponent has no flyers. So I have done that recently, where you can trigger your Ancient Machinist, the 2-1 time 2-drop that gets transformed into a Sentinel, equal to the spell's cost over 5. I have done that on just an empty board for the opponent, because I wanted to just give my unit increased stats, even though they didn't have any flyers. Why not? And yeah, it's very flexible. It's a good spell. Good spell.
Alex, the more the merrier when it comes to Shoal Dredgers.
Yeah, probably one of the 2 best shadow commons out of the first packs. I've first picked one of these before out of a weak pack. They really work well together. They work really well with what Shadow is trying to do, like putting stuff in your void and recursioning it. That's not a word, but yeah, the more the merrier. I've had decks with as many as 4. It can get a little awkward if you have them all in your opening hand or early in the game, but once you start spamming the 7/6s, it's kind of GG from there. Yeah, it's a really good common.
Sending it back over to you, John. Number 10, Primal is a solid support color, not really where you want to be as your main deck. Or your main color, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's basically true still, just because the unit quality at the common level in Primal is kind of on the low side. I feel like in all 4 packs really, right? So yeah, you're mostly playing the Primal for the occasional uncommon flyer in packs 2 and 3, or really for their great spells and interaction and card advantage. I think the one exception there is basically Maveloft Elite in packs 1 and 4, right? It's just a solid bear with upside. So
All right, sending it back over to you, Gunna. Fire is the deepest color and doesn't require synergy to be good.
I think it is. I think it is. Yeah. It just has the highest overall power level. As you say, Basher is probably the main part of that, but only hybrid as well is an excellent 4-drop that gives you some sort of card advantage if you can get some weapons and relic weapons. And then you've got, auto tread uncommon. Roaming cash is a great 2-drop. It's very solid. Malaga munitions has come up quite a lot, in my opinion, as the format's gone on. Even though it doesn't look too great on the base of it, the fact that it's got the synergies with relics, with only hybrid, scrap metal fury as well. Great. It did take a bit of a hit in the sort of middle 2 packs, I think, fire, but it's still fine. You've still got solid base of units, interaction, conflagrate, into the furnace, and yeah, it just overall I think it leans quite heavily into the direction you want to be going in this format, which is low curve aggression and bringing the beats.
Alex, 3/5s do a lot of work in this format with all the 3/3s for 3 and the 2/2s, etc., etc. But you can't forget Basher at 5/5 is running around.
So I guess the 3/5 that you're referring to is the yellow one that I can't remember the name of right now. The uncommon Mandrake.
Flytrap Goliath.
Yeah, Flytrap Goliath.
Well, there's also the Caravan Guard, and then I feel like Primal has a 3/5 as well that I'm drawing a blank on.
There's the guy that gets Death Touch and Lifesteal guy, the 3/5.
Scorpion.
The Scorpion. There you go.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, like I don't mind having any of those units in my deck. Like you mentioned, it pretty much puts a halt on your opponent's early aggressive action, except for the Basher. So it's like, yeah, it will help you double block on a Basher, but I have like the 3/5 stat other than the Basher, which is the Bane. But yes, my favorite being the yellow one.
Yeah, being able to plunder and silence a unit is extremely strong.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Goliath Flytrap, strong. Number 13, Nectar of Unlife is a very strong card, especially when getting back grafters. John, you got anything to say about this?
Yeah, that's just like Value Town, right? Like you gotta love that. It's not as good as like Triumphant Return for getting back, like that's better when you're getting back evasive units and like cheap units like flyers and stuff, like 2-drop flyers, because of the stat buff. It makes those like really, really good. Like Nectar is great with these grafters because giving any of these dorky 2/2s on the ground decay, like obviously the one already has it, but it's, that's a pretty solid upgrade for any of those 2-drops for the ground, right? That'll block anything well now. And then you get to go to your market again. Like, yeah, that's a really good use of Nectar for sure.
Number 14, Gunner, the Fate cycle are typically better in your market. So each faction has a unit that has a Fate attached to it. If you have any unit of its tribe in play, it'll draw your card when you obviously draw it, which is the Fate trigger. I feel like they're a little too... Anywho, I'll let you talk about it.
Sure. No, I'll pick up. And yeah, I think they're a little too situational to run in the main deck, especially the more expensive ones. The time and the fire are both 7-cost units, and they do have big bodies. But the fact that they're, especially the red grafter, the fact that it's a Valkyrie itself means you can kind of control pretty nicely when you draw the card. Same with the Divine Grafter. The green What's a Soldier did get a buff recently. The 3/2 now instead of a 1/1, which has made it, I think, quite a bit better, but I'm still not super psyched to be playing it. And yeah, the primal one, Grenadin, is quite good when you can get it as well, because you can proc it and it's a Grenadin. So that I think the ones that the grafters specifically that match the unit type of the fake card are slightly better than the others. But yeah, they're all fine. I think probably the Primal is the one I'm most happy to run main deck, just because it's a 3/3 for 3, and it's a Grenadin, so that's kind of where Primal and Fire, especially if you pair those together, they can do some things. I haven't seen much of it, but yeah, overall cycle probably better in your market.
Alex, greed, consuming greed is good.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with playing consuming greeds, making it work. You're not really making your deck even worse or anything. You're making it better by putting attachments such as Medibot or Watchwing support or Amberlock. It's great to run it out on 4. It's great to hold it in your hand, and if you can play in Okessa's audience on turn 5 and the consuming greed, that's just a huge tempo play. On 6, you can. It's kind of like a letdown when you have one in your hand, but it lets you on 6 play a 2-drop attachment and then drop a 6/4 and your 2/1 flyer. So it's really supported in this format, especially with like Watchwing support antics going on as well. So yeah, it's a strategy that comes together fairly easily and works very, very well.
John, you never go full Grenadin. Never.
I don't disagree with this. I mean, I guess if you're gonna do Grenadin stuff, I guess you would want to go full Grenadin, but I don't know. It's never worked out for me. I assume the same for you as well, Jedi.
You never go full Grenadin.
yeah, pretty much. I don't have a lot to add there. Yeah.
You run Grenadin synergies, you add some stuff that kind of works together, things like Scrapbot, things like Scrap Trawler, forgot what the thing's name is, or maybe even a Powder Keg Bot or something like that, but you never really go full Grenadin, because you're just going to end up weakening your deck. It's not going to play out the way you want it to.
Pretty much. Unless you're one of my opponents.
Gunner, number 17. There is only a small window to play around Misstep. Sometimes you can if it's your best unit, but really, once the game goes later on, they're just always going to be able to leave up the 2 power, and the units you're going to be playing are only going to get better. So sometimes you just got to run into it.
You do. However, I will say in this particular format, I'm not too keen on Misstep as a whole, just because the format does seem to be quite fast and aggressive and curve orientated. So, especially if you're on the draw, if you have Misstep in your hand, you're playing it. It can be quite awkward to. Sorry, I beg your pardon. If you're on the play, to hold it up, right? Because your opponents can get out ahead of you sometimes, and then it's a little bit awkward. But as you say, in the late game, you can definitely have to just sometimes bite the bullet and run out to your best card, because your opponent is always going to have the option of leaving up if they need to. But if you do identify that pause, because it is quite an obvious pause junction, because there's not too many spells, I don't think, that occur only when you play a unit. So you can sometimes identify it, and then if you do, you can force your opponent to play in suboptimal ways if they're trying to leave it open as well. I will say that.
Alex, Watchwing support is worth the build around, with probably somewhere about 4+ attachments. Doesn't work out for me, but I know it's good. Alex, tell me about it.
It's so good, Jedi. It will work out for you one day, I promise. Yeah, it's with like 4 other attachments, and by that I mean like 4 other like relics that you would use. There's a lot of other like gravy like synergies that you get, like with martial efficiency is a really good one to get a huge unit off of the top of your deck. Works good with the sandstone. Is that the sentinel that plays the
Sandbinder Sentinel.
Sandbinder Sentinel. Thank you, John, for saving me there. There's a lot of
Granite Acolyte.
little like synergies on other units that you get a random like attachment out of it, and it works really well with it. And if you have 2, it's just ridiculous. It's just really good. Yeah, play Watchwing support. Don't give up, Jedi.
John, number 19. Drifting drone is only good with Malaga munitions? Question mark.
I don't agree with that. I think there's enough support for drone in other colors than fire. Like that's a particularly good one, right? Because it the weapon is good on it and the relic can feed it on its own, so you didn't even have to necessarily put the weapon on it. But because it's a lifesteal flyer, weapons are just generally good on it, and Malagi munitions is one that you're never embarrassed to play. But no, I've played drifting drone in Combray and Argenport and had it be very good. So that's when you had the question mark, and I think that was correct there. No, I think it's just good with enough support. Period. Right.
I don't
Well,
like
I
the
think
card.
it is. No, I've had it in a lot of 7-win decks for sure.
All right, cool. Gunner, number 20. Cyber combustion is never as good as you think it will be.
So yeah, I think that links back nicely to never going full Grenadin. This is kind of one of the cards that is supposed to be a payoff for that. The idea being that you can sack the 1-drop 1/1, for example, that plays a snipe vermin and wipe your opponent's board if they've gone wide, send for reserves or flyers or what have you. And I have seen it. It has wrecked me a handful of times over the format. But yeah, it's still, unfortunately, just leading on from the fact that Primal in general is more of a support color, and that the Grenadin deck just doesn't quite come together most of the time. But just leads that this unfortunately isn't as good as it should be. I like it as a market card. I do like it as a market option. Similar to how From the Heavens is quite a good market option as well, if you have access to a Justice market, because it is kind of like a reset button, not quite to the same extent. But yeah, it's unfortunately not quite up to the power level of some of the other uncommons in this format.
Alex, is Little Seed a trap?
I think so. Unless you're in a Mandrake deck and just need Mandrakes. I mean, Christmas Land, you play it on turn 1, it just sits there, and then you kill your opponent later. I just like killing my opponent now. So yeah, I avoid it only when I'm desperate for playables. Do I play it?
All right, sweet. Number 22, John. Wind Channeler is very playable.
Yeah, I keep seeing plenty of players main decking a Wind Channeler or two. I assume their deck has soldier payoffs and whatnot. I don't think I've main decked one yet, but I've definitely played it out of my market plenty of times. It's being able to deal with a flyer is always a good option to have, and this one leaves behind a body, which sometimes you can maybe sacrifice it or something, or with the call and allies make it a real unit. But yeah, some people are just main decking these, I think, without possibly without any support. I think just dealing with a problem flyer is just that important, right? So if you didn't get there with other ways to interact with flyers, I think you would run this.
All right, number 23, Gunner. Fluctuate Reality. Great or just decent?
I think it's great. I think it's probably Primal's best uncommon.
Get out.
The best uncommon in the Pact 104. Purely the main point being, honestly, you can play it on turn 3 and it's effectively polymorph versus a basher, which is quite good to have. I mean, obviously sometimes there'll be a high roll where your opponent will get an auto tread or something of that nature, which is still not great. But yeah, most times you're gonna be downgrading the unit quite considerably, and in the late game you can just do it for 9. There's some amp synergies you can work in. And most of the time in the late game, I find myself actually transforming my units to better units if there's like a board stall, because transforming unless it's like an evasive unit, what have you, transforming your opponent's 6-drop to a 4-drop, probably not going to open up the ground, but transforming your 5-drop into a 7 or your 6 into an 8 could potentially give you something very nice that swings the game in your favor. So yeah, it's embrace the randomness. It's fun to spin the wheel sometimes and just go with it.
Number 24, Alex. Root Ripper is a very solid card, especially after the buff to the health, making it a 2/3 instead of a 2/2.
Yeah, I love this Mandrake before the buff. I like it even more now. It's like removal. If you need it to be removal, it can help you in your aggressive strategy. It's a very flexible card. Buffing all of your other Mandrakes with Overwhelm is huge. Goes a long way towards killing your opponent. So yeah, pick this card. I like it, and you see them late because people don't like Primal. So yeah.
John, number 25. Everyone loves drawing cards, and drawing cards feels so good, but Maveloft Quartermaster is just too slow.
Yeah, I think in this current state of the format, I basically agree with this. I think maybe you can still play it if you're in like, if Primal was just so insanely open in pack 1 where you came out with, 3 elites and like 3 hardinesses, then I think that deck would play a Quartermaster and be happy to. But I think for, if you're just trying to play it alongside like Gravity Gloves and Send the Reserves, like slower amplify cards, I just think like as a 5-drop, you're too at risk of just getting run over for the most part right now. So I agree with that.
Gunner, it doesn't take too many weapons to make Oni Hybrid a fantastic card.
Yeah, I hard agree on that one. You probably want 2 to 3, and then any more than 3, and it starts to be probably the best card in your deck. Because recurring, especially Gravity Glove, specifically, can just be awesome. But even if you're just getting back, a 2/1 Iron Hook or Iron Sword or what have you from Amalgam Munitions, it's just extra value. Extra value. You can pitch your weapons to Basher on turn 3, play this on turn 4, grab them back, so you're not actually down a card. Yeah, it's just a very solid. Flyers are great in this format. Where's the weapons that you get back well? Pyromancer's Gloves adds for even more value. Getting another 3/1 Outlaw on the bottom of your deck is just all gravy. And yeah, and it's even a relevant unit type for Valkyrie, for those Valkyrie Warp synergies. That while they don't come up too often, they are very nice if you can get them.
All right, number 27, Alex. You are always happy to have one Shadowwalk Cloak in your deck.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with this. Shadow card, so you're gonna have a very high access to the Shoal Dredger, which it goes very good on the Shoal Dredger. But there are some decks that it's probably not too great of a card, but it is some good evasion late game. It helps you filter through your deck a little bit more with the plunder. So yeah, I think I mostly agree with that.
John, number 28, Windmill Slam Short Hopper. The 4/4 flyer for 4 is always great. It's not difficult to put something in your market to make it a flyer.
Oh, definitely. I think like pack 1 pick 1, like maybe martial efficiency I'd take over it, but yeah, like that's a very good unit. If I'm getting past that and I'm playing one of the colors, I'm happy to splash that in any deck. I'll make sure to prioritize some fixing to play it, because not only is the unit great, but the flexibility and value you can get for being able to get a specific spell from your market is actually really good with this short hopper as well. Yeah, this card always overperforms for me.
Gunner, number 29, Metal Fang is great and definitely worth the splash.
Yeah, I'm getting all the busted uncommons to talk about. which is fine, to be fair. But yeah, they are. Metal Fang is extremely good card. It could be a rare, and you wouldn't look twice. You'd say, yeah, sure, that's a great card. It stabilizes the board if you're behind, giving 3 units in 1, and then it just wins the game. Lifesteal, hasty. Oh, sorry. Even if you're at 9 power, you can play it, activate it in the same turn, and you can splash it because it's 1 pip of each color in probably the 2 colors you're most likely to splash in, mainly because of this card. It's very, in a format of broken uncommons, almost you could say it's apart from martial efficiency, probably the one that wins the most games single-handedly on its own. It gives you the feeling, your opponent's on 5 power, they got the colors to cast this card. You just hope that they don't have this card in their hand on turn 6, because otherwise you probably can't win unless you have your own one.
Alex, where are we on relay point? Are we still low on it?
I think it's completely acceptable if you're in Combre, right? And it's just a 2-drop. That is kind of hard to cast, but you get an okay payoff with the Sentinel at the end of it. So I think it's an okay card. I'm not like prioritizing playing it, but I think it's okay.
All right. I just know it's picked up a little bit of momentum here lately, so I figured we mention it. John, number 31. The factionless plunder units are all great.
I mean, did you forget about the Grenadin one?
Oh, I guess that does.
Because this exactly happened to me this morning. I was in team chat with Stormguard, I think, and we were talking draft, and we were like, "Oh yeah, those are all great." And then somebody was like, "What about the Grenadin?" It's like, "Oh yeah, I guess that. Yeah, no, I don't like that one really." So yeah, everyone
Okay,
but the
3 out of
Grenadin
4.
makes my decks. Yeah, the
Never
one.
go full Grenadin.
Yeah, we're coming back to that rule. I think. Yeah, stay away from that one. You'll be okay.
Number 32, Gunner. I was never sold on the stun and kill 'em deck.
Yeah, me neither. I've seen some very, very rarely I'll come across and play someone that has made it work. But even then, the pieces aren't quite there for it to come together consistently. It's kind of an analogy for most of the synergy decks in this format, I feel, is that you're probably just better off playing more generically powerful cards than trying to go for sort of specific synergies, whether that be stun and kill, Grenadin, as we've mentioned, stuff like that. They just unfortunately don't come together quite as often on quite a high power level as just playing good units. And yeah, sort of the marquee uncommon, the 2/2 Aegis that kills a stunned unit is not, unfortunately, unless you sort of have an Eye of Winter or you're getting up to 8+ ways to stun, I would say it's probably just better off as a card if you're in those colours. It is a soldier, so he's got some cross synergies there as well. But yeah, as a whole, I don't think it quite gets there as a deck.
Alex, speaking of stunning, Tools of Oppression is still bad. Help, I'm being oppressed.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, but it is an acceptable market card. You can get it out of the market with one of the grafters, or it's a late game stun stuff. So it's okay in the market, but do not put it in your main.
Speaking of getting stuff out of the market, John, number 34, Traveler's Fair is way too slow.
Slow in his response. See what he's doing there?
Sorry. Slow to respond. There you go. Yeah, no, I was muted. My bad. It is way too slow in this format. It's like that like I think you could maybe play it when it was like the reverse packs a few weeks ago, and like you could kind of play 5-faction decks and whatnot. But now you would just get run over trying to play this card, like, and trying to like play it from the market to then go to your market more is like even slower. It's like, no, I think it's just too slow. I agree with that.
Number 35, Gunner. When in doubt, take a rail driver for the market.
This is quite a good point. Because I don't know about everyone else, but for the amount of rail drivers that I put in my market, the amount of time that I actually grab it is a lot less than 1 in 5. And yeah, while it's fine, it's a colorless option to have. It's got some weapon synergy, stuff like that. It just, yeah, it never excites me enough. But I suppose the fact that it's flexible is enough for it to be certainly taken. Whether it makes the final market depends on your access and stuff like that, and the other options that you've got. But yeah, it started off in the beginning of this format. You know, when this set first dropped, that rail driver almost an auto include in most crafter markets. But now I'm a bit lower on it for me personally.
Fair enough, fair enough. All right, sending it back over to Alex for number 36. Roto Scavenger doesn't feel as strong as it should be.
Yeah, I think I agree. For an uncommon, it doesn't seem very pushed. It could probably be a 2/2 or something would make it a lot better. I like the decay on it, but I think I can count on one hand the times I've seen it, the trigger go off. So, I mean, it's a 2-drop for a shadow deck, but it's nothing special.
You never go full Grenadine.
There you go.
John, number 37. Rail Driver Valkyrie does a surprising amount of work in this format.
Yeah, it really does. Like, first of all, Valkyrie synergy is on 2, right? So that's like the earlier you can play your Valkyrie, the more likely one of your Valkyrie warp cards is to actually do anything. So there's that. The snipe that you get for free almost always gets some value, whether it's popping a regen or killing, an X1. And then just like the 1/3 body is like really good in the format at just clogging up the air. It wears weapons, obviously it's a flyer, but like, a lot of your opponents will some opponents will just be playing nothing but flyers, right? Like they'll just be spamming 1/1s and 2/1s, and this thing blocks literally every one of those. It's only once you get to 6 with like air support does this thing stop just clogging up the air. So yeah, this one's really solid.
Gunner. Remember, Deadly and Laser Blast work great together.
They do, yeah. Which is why Core Tap Maximizer was in our pack 1 pick 1 choices earlier on. Certainly a very nice 2-drop to have, because you can go turn 3, even though on the draw they play Basher. You can either leave your Core Tap around to try and block it, or you can just Laser Blast it on 3 for 1 and take care of that problem handily. As well as Razorbot is also widely mentioned. The 1/1 Grenadine. There's actually a Grenadine I quite like, especially in shadow decks. Logs up the ground, and as I mentioned earlier, you need to have a plan for Basher. So deadly units that are cheap are quite good answers. Laser Blast and Overwhelm, I will add something as well. Overwhelm does work also with Laser Blast, which can be quite handy if you're trying to find a lethal later on in the game. Just Laser Blasting one of your enemy's smallest units with a big Overwhelm can push you over the top as well.
Alex, number 39. Blood Boil Executioner is good.
I think I mostly agree. It's a okay top end of your curve for a red deck. You don't really want more than one, though, and they're pretty easily grabbed. You can snatch one up pretty easily. I kind of like them out of the market, to be honest with you, but I think they are a pretty solid unit.
John, Gloves of the Pyromancer is solid.
Yeah, I think we already talked about this card a little bit earlier. Like it's you're happy to run this in any fire deck, I think, in the format, period. And then just being able to recur this while getting the value of the the fate trigger with the free unit and all that, like it's a good, it's a well statted weapon already, and then it's just like extra value on top of value. Yeah, it plays out better than it maybe even looks in the format. It's quite good.
Gunner, in this format, curve matters a lot.
A lot, a lot, a lot. That cannot be overstated, I feel. Especially it might be even more apparent since the format changed. Last format, pack orders. You could be slow. You could dawdle around a bit. You could be, more than 3 faction if you wanted to, or if the draft led you in that direction. But with the pack switch back this way, it just seems like everything's 1 or 2 turns faster than it should be, and aggression, aggro. You need to have 2 drops. You need to have 3 drops for sure. And you need to have a plan for the basher.
Fair enough. Alex, number 42, Mavloth Elite is not just a 2-drop.
Well, technically, it is a 2-drop.
I said not just. It's a 2-drop plus.
So you run these in your deck, even if you don't have Amplify as a 2-drop. When they're sitting across the board for me, they're kind of terrifying. So it is way more than just a 2-drop. Even late game, you have to consider the elite because they can get big at any time. So you have to deal with them still. They're like a fire rod. So I like putting this in my deck, and if you have a little bit of Amplify, they become great.
John, number 43, a Scrap Hound can be a legit threat in some decks. It doesn't take much to make this guy one heck of a card.
This is the 1/1 sack of Grenadin, right, for 4. Make it like a 6/6.
No, that's Scrap Hound. Oh wait, yeah, that is. I'm sorry, you're right. My bad. Later on. You're right. Yes.
Right, that's what we're talking about. So
yes.
Yeah, that's like once it's a 6/6, that stats is basically as good as it gets in this format, right? Like 5/5 is kind of like the bar. So it's like really good if you can make that pop off. Like this is one of the better payoffs for being heavily, obviously not fully, in Grenadin. One would never want to do such a thing, right? These things always seem to. I mean, they're reminiscent of the card we just talked about, right? Mavloth Delete. Like they seem to just be pretty consistent at growing, and they should be treated with respect and dealt with post haste.
They're definitely not a threat until they become a threat, and then they're a big one.
Yeah, that's too late.
Gunner, number 44, techniques always seem to pay off in some form or fashion. Of course, it's one of those things where the sum of there's some, what is it? The total is greater than the sum of its parts, right?
Yes.
No.
Indeed, the flexibility of these matters a lot. Which is why amplified cards are so good and limited, is because you can tailor them to fit in your curve when you need them. Send for the reserves, just on a tangent, is a great card because of all the synergies, but it's just the fact that you can play it on 2, you can play it on 4, you can play it on 6, and this kind of is similar to these. There's 3 modes on these. While none of them are particularly fantastic on all of them, the fact that you get the choice and they are so cheap means that if you're in those colors, you're going to be playing them and you're going to be pretty happy about it. Whether that be, mode 1, mode 2, or mode 3, you've just always got the chance, if none of the other modes are relevant, to just create a unit and see what you get. So yeah, I haven't had too much experience with these, just because I think I value them slightly less than most people, so I don't see them too much of the time when I would. But whenever I've played them, they have been certainly more than serviceable in the respective colours. Sure.
Alex, Jang Lee, Lord Steyer's Tower, Daikro, Oldermuck. Speaking Circle, and Battle Bearer are all chase rares that you are happy to first pick and happy to have in your deck.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. The Molder Muck kind of goes in a more specific deck, I would say, but I'm not opposed to first picking it. I think it's the least one I would want to get married to, I guess, out of all of those rares or mythic rares. But I mean, you can't go wrong with those cards. They're amazing. They warp your draft. You want to go into that color. Yeah, great cards.
John, Gelatinous Form and Gold Plate Goliath are awesome, but just a little too expensive for this format.
Yeah, I agree. I like even when I'm in Primal, I think Gelatinous Form gets cut from the vast majority of my decks. Like I think I've played it a handful of times, but definitely not since the latest format change. It's definitely too slow now. And like Gold Plate Goliath is how much is that one? Is that like a 9-drop or something like?
Something like that. I think it's expensive, but I mean, it's a threat, right? I mean, that rune or whatever that guy is, the 10/10 for 8. I mean, it's just a dirtly
Yeah.
10/10, so you don't even consider that.
It's
But
an
this guy
8-drop.
is, yeah.
It's just too slow. I like the one kind of 7-drop I am more willing to maybe play in my draft deck is like Corpse Bloom right now, and that's more because there's a lot of opportunities to like cheat it out with like Shoal Stirrings or something, right? Like whereas Gelatinous Form doesn't have any tribal synergies going on or anything. It's just a 7. So it's like a hard to cast 7-drop. No, too expensive right now. You'll get run over trying to play 7-drops usually.
Sending it back over to Gunner, going into the home stretch. The symmetrical cards are just bad.
Yes, unfortunately, as nice as it would be if they were good, they are not good. You are inherently down a card if you play them, so your opponent gets the advantage. Not only do they get the advantage first, but you have spent a card for you both to get the effects. And yeah, they get to take the lead on when they get the effects come into play first, which is even worse. So yeah, they are. I've never played any. I'm always happy when my opponent plays them against me, and that's a sign of a card that's not very good in general. I think when you're happy that your opponent plays it, same as the 3/2 fake guy that draws a card for Aegis, the trooper. Whenever my opponent plays one of those, I'm like, oh hey, free card, great. Attached to that body, you just take it every day.
All right. Ooh, I timed this perfectly. It's going to come all the way back around for you for the last one. Awesome. Alex, number 48. Vine Tangler Ultimate is really, really expensive, i.e. 9. Yes, the ability of Crest, it does trigger off of any ultimate, so not just itself, but yeah, it's just a pretty expensive one. I believe they nerfed it, right? It was what, 7 and they bumped it up to 9, or it was 8?
I mean, you need to remind me what this card even is. I'm sorry.
It's the 2/4 that whenever a Mandrake ultimates, it makes a 3/3 Mandrake, and then you could pay 9 to give all your Mandrakes killer.
Right. So I mean, if you're getting ultimates from other things, that's great to just pop out a unit, for just ultimating. But don't count on it triggering itself, really. It's just not going to happen.
John, number 49, Beacon of War, question mark. Are we high on this? Are we low on this? I have no idea.
I mean, I think as as for the podcast, right? I think we're a little low on this compared to others. Like I know like if I'm a nice aggressive deck, especially if I have some flyers, like I'll main deck one. I think for the vast majority of the times I'm playing one of these, it's in my market though. I see a lot of my opponents play one of these against me though, like so they're either playing more than one or like more of them are main decking it or whatever. Like I'm not seeing a lot of them come out of my opponent's market, so I don't know. Like I'll happily play one in in an aggressive deck. But I don't know. I think we're generally lower on this than some other people.
I know I am. All right, bringing it back around finally to our draft world champion. Well, yeah, draft champion. Number 50. There are plenty of ways to make Scrap Metal Fury amazing, which was initially what I thought Scrap Hound was. But Scrap Metal Fury, which is a 2/2 decay, then you put cards in your market, and then it gives you rustlings, and it does all the millions of things. And oh gosh, you're recurring it too. Sweet baby Jeebus. Gunner.
Indeed. I did have the good fortune to triumphant return one of these a couple of days ago, and it was very nice. It's a very good card in general, like just as a flat rate. Even if you never buff it, if you never enhance it in any way, it blocks a basher, shrinks it down, makes it manageable, and then gives you 2 more bodies as well. But once you start putting Malaga munitions, if you ever get to combo it with Psy Slash, I think my record of this is making 9 rustlings, which I did a couple of weeks ago. Last week I made 9 rustlings off of it, which was with Slash and 1 more pump. I think it had a gloves on it as well, so I gloved it up with gloves of the Pyromancer, and then Slashed, which was fun. Yeah, you can do some pretty wacky stuff with this. It's good with War Painter, the 1/4 inspire, in fire that gives your dudes that you draw +1 attack. Good with Horn of Plenty. If you get that, making 2/2s instead of 1/1s is a massive difference. It's a great card, and it's one of the reasons, that fire is so good in this format overall.
Nice. Well done, gentlemen. All right. We have the draft open this weekend, so Godspeed to everyone that is going to be participating into it. Go ahead and give them our last going tip for all those people out there. Alex, what is your tip for people playing in this weekend's open?
Avoid queuing into Gunner and such. No, I'm just kidding.
But not really.
No, just so take your time on the drafts. Try to draft the best deck possible. Focus on your curve. It's one of the first pointers that we had there. And just I guess I don't know. You're going to have to edit this out. Go with someone else first. I'll think about something else. Go with someone else first.
Too late. Nope, it's raw. I'm
That's
shipping this as soon as
Ship
the
it.
podcast is done.
There you go.
Yep.
Just cut it off.
I'm not even joking. I'm being straight
cut
up
it
true right
off
now.
after not queuing into Gunner then.
No, I'm literally going to take this file and upload it to YouTube so I can go to bed and it's out by tomorrow. I'm not even going to lie. So you did
Just in
great.
time.
Absolutely fantastic.
Great.
All right, John, what's your tip?
Yeah. Well, first of all, definitely play in it because the rewards are insane. So even if you're not like a drafter, I think like the value is just there. Like do it, have some fun. I think if you're trying to take it more seriously, I think like focus on your curve is great. And just like draft with a plan, right? Like don't just take the best cards in the pack. Start early considering like what your plan is going to be, right? Like I don't know. I love having a solid game plan when I, for like what I'm going for just for my mulligans before I play my first game, right? I'm like, all right, what kind of hand am I looking for here? How am I going to deploy my threats? Like, what's the plan here? Like, I don't know. I started thinking about that when I picked my first draft card. So that's my advice.
All right, Gunner, what's your advice to people playing in this weekend's open?
So I would echo what the guys have said already. Take your time. There's no rush at all. Drafting phase, building your deck during the games. Just make sure that you not too much distractions if you can help it, and just try and focus on the task at hand if you can. Have fun. Honestly, we've got more tournaments now for draft, which is excellent. And just that's what I did last time. I just played it one game at a time, took my luck when I got it, made some okay plays, and managed to get there. And if I can do it, I'm for sure anyone else can do it, 100%. So just if luck's on your side, you can go for it and maybe make day 2 and maybe even win the whole shebang. And yeah, good luck, everyone.
All right, guys, that's good to do it for us. Gunner, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and give us your insight. Really appreciate you, friend. Where can people find you at?
So they can find me. I do have a Twitch channel actually, which hasn't been very active over the last few months, unfortunately. But yeah, they can find me at twitch.tv/Gunner116. Maybe in the near future, I shall be returning, depending on how real life situation goes. But yeah, apart from that, I'm not really too active on social media. But you can normally find me hanging out in a limited Eternal Twitch category.
All right, guys, that's good to do it. Good luck in your queues this weekend. Have a great time. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you, Direwolf, for making this happen. Until next time, as always, happy gaming.
Look in the open.
Good luck. Thanks.
Good luck, everyone. Have fun.